and we'll hop on. I'm going to share. Oh, let me get the correct screen up. Okay, bear with me 1 minute. All right, you guys. Oh, almost there. Sorry about that. Here we go. All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you guys so much for hopping on today. I so appreciate it. I know some of you registered and some of you saw my email, but real quick, so we're all on the same page, just wanted to give you a little heads up. We're going to be talking about database management today, and we're going to be talking about KvCore. This is one of my absolute favorite topics to talk about because, in my opinion, it's one of the hardest to recognize. But once you get the hang of it, it can really help you run your business. This was something that I thankfully learned very early in my career. And in my opinion, this is one of the ways that really helps manage those ebbs and flows, right? We've all been in that situation where we have a client that's hot and heavy and ready to go, and we're recognizing that they're going to be our next contract, and then out of nowhere some life event happens, or for whatever reason they kind of take a break, or interest rates change, right, and they decide they want to sit tight for a second. And without recognizing where different people fall in our database, having a conversation like that can feel like quite a blow, because then we have this panic of, where is my next contract going to come from, right? No matter how long we've been in the business, we've all had that moment. And so if we can really organize our database in a way that makes sense to us, then it helps manage that, because then we know who to go to next and kind of where to focus our time in the meantime. So all that said, I am working very hard to actively make our classes a little more engaging for a number of reasons. First and foremost, I don't love hearing myself talk endlessly for an hour and a half, but also because, we designed these classes, Brian and I, based on our own personal experiences and kind of how we run our business. But there's no one way to do all of this. There's no right or wrong way to do it. And so if we can kind of hear from you guys how you do it, or some advice or questions that you have, it's valuable to us, but also valuable to everyone else in attendance. And it's a nice perspective to add. So I'm going to be asking a lot of questions in this class. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please don't leave me hanging. I don't mind some crickets, but I would love to hear from you guys. As you guys know, we record these classes, so we're going to go over a lot. By all means, take some notes and really focus in, but don't feel the need to copy down everything. I will provide a copy of the recording and a copy of the slides once it's all uploaded later today. So that is yours to have as a resource as well. And I think we've got mainly Choice people here, but just in case, my name is Kate Stedman. I'm the Director of Agent Development here at Choice Residential. I run trainings like these to help you guys run your business like a business. So if you want to chat offline, if you want to talk about how to organize your database, or if you have other questions about KvCore, or if you are not a Choice agent and you want to learn more about what we have to offer here, please, by all means, drop me a line. I would love to chat with you and hop on a Zoom. So I'll drop my information in the chat here in a little bit, but let's go ahead and get started. I love this class. We're going to be covering a lot today. We're going to start off by talking about what makes up your database. There is a difference between a database and a lead. And like I talked about, understanding where different people fall within our database can really help us understand where our business will be coming from. But more than that, it will help us understand how we need to have different conversations with different people and at what time, right? The conversations in general tend to be the same, but the spacing of it and the urgency of it can be a little bit different, or the way that we acquired these leads or these people as leads can vary, and the conversation can depend on that as well. So we'll talk about all of that. We'll also talk about our SOI. I think I speak for everyone when I say our ideal situation as an agent is to have all of the leads just referred to us and never to have to really lead generate. And so the easiest way to do that is to turn everyone we know into our biggest cheerleaders. But that said, we do kind of need to train the people around us to recognize us as an agent and teach them how to make that introduction and make sure that we're having that relationship with them in a way that encourages that referral source. We'll talk about that as well. We'll talk about where different people fall within our pipeline and what those conversations are, or what those comments are that should be kind of a flag in our head of, oh, I need to put my real estate hat on and have an opportunity to have a conversation with this person. And then lastly, it sounds like this is the reason a lot of you guys are in this class today. We're going to talk about how we use KvCore. We're going to talk about our CRM. We're going to talk about the different functionalities of it and how you can organize people in your database and really let your system work for you. Obviously, if you only have a few clients, then it's really easy to keep things organized. But as you build your business, as you acquire leads here and there that might not necessarily be as hot, maybe someone from an open house that you only spoke to once and they put down their contact information but have never really answered the phone call, right? Those aren't the people that we're keeping front of mind to reach out to, but we should be occasionally. But more than that, we really want to make sure that our system is working for us and communicating with them so that at some point when they raise their hand, we're ready to jump on that and make that conversion and build some value so we can turn them into a client. So we're going to talk about all of that here today. As we get started, I want to just ask you guys, in your opinion, what is a database and what does it mean to have one? Anyone? Would anyone like to share? Okay, fine.
Hey, you got to give us a second. It takes us a minute to find a mute button.
Fair enough.
So, I guess in my former life, my previous professional life, I used to keep databases for a lot of things, and basically, it is just that. It's all the data that you have on something. So I think in this case, in real estate, we're talking about people, but like for me, it could be material that I had from different visits, for example, and I would let that accumulate over time. I was still visiting different offices and looking at different logistics in each office. And so I was taking note of that. I'd also capture people as well, because I had who to contact for this, who to contact for that, and anything that I saw that was problematic. And of course, I was tracking that as well. And that was years ago. It was pretty crude little, database, if you will, but just keeping things in different categories, almost like on Excel. I used Excel, and then I used, of course, Word, because I would create a report for everybody. So I know that with this stuff, it's a lot more complicated, but there are also tools that you can use. So that's really what I'm looking for is, I need to be prompted. I need to be reminded, contact this person, or, don't contact this person. So that's why you mentioned KvCore. I'm really, looking for some way of managing all this information.
That was beautifully said. And I like that you mentioned that it's not just people, but also information, because that's exactly what we're doing here. We're building a list of information that we've acquired about this person so that we have something to look back to, but also more than that, so we can build a true relationship with someone. We have a lot of conversations with people. And so having somewhere to put all of that, to keep all of that front of mind, is one of the easiest ways we can build that relationship. Beautifully said. Thank you. Anyone else want to share what their perspective is on a database? It can be from real estate, or just like Billy Joe just said, it can be from a past career. All right. Well, in my opinion, having a database is really and truly consisting of anyone that you know that could send you business or could turn into business themselves, right? Anyone you know that could send you business or turn into business themselves. And I think this is really important for us to recognize, because especially as we're first getting into the business, or especially once we've had one of those clients kind of fall off the radar and we're wondering who we're going to be working with, it's kind of autopilot to feel like our database should be the people that are ready to buy right now, right? Especially if we've moved to this area and we're new to real estate, feeling like we have no one in our database. But people are moving here all the time from other places. And so having relationships with outside agents in other states, for example, that's still a part of your database, right? They are people that could very, very well send us business, or it could be people that we know on Facebook or Instagram that might turn into business, right? If we're seeing that they have some life changes happening, that could be an opportunity for us to start a conversation with them. So having a database means we have all of these people, but more than that, we understand where each of them fall with relation to how they can fit into our business, and how they're going to help us grow, and therefore how we should communicate with each of them. Someone that's in another state and has no possibility really of moving here, but very well could, is a good friend and could be a good referral source. That's going to be a very specific conversation, as opposed to someone that I might meet at, intramural kickball or out when I'm at a local restaurant or something like that, right? Different conversations. And then having a CRM is one of the easiest ways for us to keep all of that organized. So when I say everyone, like I mentioned, we mean everyone, right? It's really about creating relationships that can turn into consistent referrals. And sometimes we might not see it coming from a mile away. And sometimes we can feel like, well, they know a million people, right? Well, so does everyone. Everyone knows a million agents, but our job here is to make sure that we build relationships with them and that we build value. But more than that, that we are simply here to be a resource relating to real estate. I think it's all about transitioning this relationship so that they recognize the professionalism that we hold, and how much value we have and how importantly we see this, and trusting us to have that conversation, because, I'll talk about this in a moment, or I'll get right into it right now, but there's a ton of different categories that fall into what makes up our database, right? I have a ton of friends and family that live in the triangle. They've known me forever. They know a ton of people, right? But they know me from growing up, or they know me in college, and they might not necessarily know me in a professional sense. And so I'm going to have to work really hard to transition that relationship to show them that value. So I use this example regularly. If you've heard it already, I apologize, but I'll mention it again, is my dad, right? Obviously known me my whole life, but a few years ago, he wanted to redecorate his living room. My mom has sent me, I don't know, 8, 10 clients over time. My dad, he's not as social, right? So he hasn't sent me any clients, but I'm holding out hope that at some point he's going to send me a referral. And I know he knows I work hard, but I wanted him to see the way that I would handle working with a client. And so when he wanted to redecorate his living room, I was helping him look for couches and some rugs and tables and things like that. And I recognized, based on what Mary Lou talks about, kind of his disc profile communication style, he's very concise and to the point. He really likes things in a spreadsheet. He's very analytical, right? And so when I was doing all of this for him, I made a spreadsheet with an outline of what the vendors were, when it was going to be delivered, what the measurements were. I even included a few reviews or some of the common comments from people that had purchased the item, right? I was really diving into that because I recognized that although he's known me my whole life, he's never been a client of mine. And so we really need to recognize that these people might be in our database, but we need to train them to see how we are as a real estate professional. Same thing goes with our friends. Now, I think when we're talking about real estate, like I said before, we can be really down in the weeds of thinking, where's my next client? But really and truly, we just need to be building this network, and the relationships will come from that. And therefore the referrals will come. So putting ourselves in situations where we have the opportunity to meet people in a way that's engaging and in a way that gives us opportunity to kind of keep an ear out of changes happening in their lives, right? So when we have been in a place for a while, we kind of get out of the habit of putting ourselves in new situations. But I'd like to challenge you to push those boundaries, right? You all have a database that you're working with right now, but we should always be working on expanding that. And not just for leads, but we're a big believer here that you should be running your business in a way that excites you. And so I say all of this to say, get excited about finding hobbies, get excited about exploring new restaurants or going to networking groups, or finding sports that you want to try, or a new instrument that you want to learn, right? Anything like that, because that's going to put you in a situation where you have the opportunity to meet someone that you wouldn't have otherwise met. I just moved, right? So I've been in Raleigh my whole life. I know a ton of people, and I definitely was in that situation of like, I know enough people now, right? But moving somewhere new, it has kind of refreshed that for me and recognized that I need to put myself in other situations. And so the other week, I was going to go to a roller skating class, and I got my times wrong. So I was texting the woman, and I had mentioned when we were on the phone something about time zones. And so she texted me back and she said, by the way, you mentioned time zones. Where are you from? And so I told her, and she said, well, welcome to Austin. Please let me know if you need any recommendations. I'm in real estate. I'm a foodie, and I'm in the art community, and did like a little smiley face, right? And so I chatted with her offline, and I let her know the role I was in. And I was like, first of all, amazing text, right? Like, way to kind of slide it in there in a way that's casual, but lets you know that you're in real estate. So all of that to say, put yourselves in those situations. Obviously, we want to be building relationships with our vendors. Same thing goes. We know our vendors know a lot of people, but at the same time, I've had plenty of vendors send me clients. I've had one come from my photographer. I've had one come from an attorney friend. I had an attorney call me the other day and try to offer me a job, right? Like, the people that we put ourselves in relationship with, if we can make sure that we are showing our professionalism and really working hard for our clients, it goes a lot further than we recognize. So those people need to be in our database as well. Obviously, our past clients, on-site agents from new construction, agents in other states is a big one. I know I mentioned that earlier, but MLD had mentioned an amazing script for that as an opportunity to kind of build our database, and talking to people that are in our database already. Maybe it's someone we haven't talked to in a while, or maybe it's a past client, or maybe it's just a friend that we know in another state that we saw has purchased a home recently, and reaching out to that person and just saying, hey, I know our market very well, but I really want to be in the know of what's happening in other markets. So I just wanted to reach out to you. It looks like you bought a house recently. Just wanted to see what your market was like. Awesome. Oh, interesting. It sounds very similar. Yeah. Or is this kind of picking back up as well? If you don't mind me asking, how was your agent to work with? Did you enjoy it? Or is there any feedback you wish you could provide to them? Oh man, they seem like an amazing agent. Would you mind sending me their contact information? I really like being in conversation and in relationship with other amazing agents. I would love to have an opportunity to speak with them, and getting that agent's number and then giving them a call and just saying, hey, my name is Kate Stedman. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is one of the fastest growing areas in the country. We get a ton of clients from other states, and your area is one of those that we hear of regularly. But that said, I also have people moving out of the state. So just wanted to reach out. I got your information from Joe Smith, and he mentioned that you were absolutely amazing to work with. That sounds like the type of agent that I'd like to be in business with. I wanted to see if you wanted to kind of start a referral partnership together, right? It's an opportunity to have a conversation in a way that we might not have thought of. And then before you know it, you're getting referrals left and right. I have an agent down in Charlotte that I had sent some business to, and we now send each other business back and forth. So it can snowball quickly. Obviously, we also have our buyer leads and our seller leads, maybe people that we got at open houses and internet leads. But I'd love to hear from you guys, who is in your database, or what people from your SOI, what situations are you putting yourselves in? What hobbies do you have that give you the opportunity to build your database? And where have you seen a lot of that come from?
Kate, the other day, I just took my hairstylist some coffee, and then I ended up, one of the other hairstylists like, Renew, she needs a real estate agent. So I met a client there, and then just put my business cards at the hair salon. So I've been trying to put my name out there, go to like exercise classes, just different things in my neighborhood too, to meet more people and let more people know I'm doing real estate.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, I've said it a million times over, you guys know I'm all about it, but just being a good friend, right? Like, being in real estate has made me a better friend, and I really just so enjoy that. I love doing those little things that you wouldn't expect. If it's a friend's birthday, just doing a little drop off of a gift and leaving it on their front porch, because who does that now, right? But I've done the same thing. My hairdresser, her office or her hair salon is like 2 blocks from my house, and I know her coffee order. And so occasionally, like once a month or so, I'd pop in and just bring her a coffee. 9 times out of 10, she has someone in her chair. So I know the second I leave, they're like, who's that? That's our agent, right? But she is a really good friend of mine, just doing things that make you feel good and make them know that they're thought about. It's awesome. What else you guys got?
A lot of mine are past coworkers. Just worked in the childcare field for so long. And in education. So that, and then neighbors. I know in the spring and summertime and fall, when I go yard sale shopping in the neighborhood, I've picked up a client that way. So just those kind of things. I'm sorry, not feeling well.
You're good. No, that's perfect though. One of my, that's so funny you say that because my neighbors are like that too. I haven't really put myself out there in terms of farming my neighborhood, but they certainly know who I am. And so 9 times out of 10, if I see one of them, they're going to ask about work or they're going to ask about the market. And they know I'm not there to sell them, but I'm going to give them insight into what's actively happening. And transparently, I get a lot of that information from our Monday wrap-up calls, right? Just kind of seeing what's happening in the market and how competitive things are, or what the deposit situations are like, or if people are going above or below. I know Greg is really good about working his neighborhood as well. I know those of you that were on track might have heard this, but our Coach Kat mentioned that she makes a habit of every week she tries to invite one person, like one new person to their home for dinner. And so that was someone a few weeks ago, that was someone from church. They had like a little game night. He wasn't from the area. She has a number of children. And so it was just nice to connect with them. That's awesome. Past coworkers, though, also Taylor Oldham is a big advocate for that. I think, you know, she was a client of one of our agents, and then she became an agent. And then a number of her past clients have been people that she used to work with. And then in all of that, she's also transitioned a number of them into being agents over at Choice as well. Anything else you guys want to share? Any other places that you're finding yourselves, or any other hobbies that you're trying to pick up? Cool. Well, as you do those things.
So I've put up like flyers at the rock climbing gym I go to, but I get a lot from like past coworkers because I worked in the downtown Raleigh restaurant industry. So I know a lot of people downtown Raleigh, and a lot of them are first time home buyers that don't know they can buy. So it really, really works and helps to chat with them a lot and let them know that they can buy. And then so I get a lot of mine from that. And then I like hiking, rock climbing partners.
Yeah. And it's a relationship-based business. So having already met them in person is like step one. They've already gotten a face and a name and a conversation, but also having mutual hobbies or common interests helps build that relationship, gives us kind of a jumping off point, lets them know we're human, right? Like I think people are being sold things all the time and they know it. So let's just make it a human experience. Cool. Good stuff, y'all. So all of that said, our ultimate goal is for us to turn our SOI into a referral source. They send us someone they know, or they themselves are ready to buy. They become a client. We go under contract, get them to closing. They become a past client. We nurture them as we should be as a past client. And then the process repeats. So keeping that in mind, just kind of knowing that at any point we should have our real estate hat on, because it could really turn into a source of business for us. And that we want to be showing our professionalism. And, you know, I think when you go into any situation knowing that your whole goal is just to be a source of knowledge for people and to truly be a resource, and again, recognizing like I'm not there to sell them, I'm just there to show them what I know, then that in and of itself kind of builds that trust. We want to be turning everyone we know into our biggest cheerleader. So we need to keep in mind, again, how they know us, and we might need to kind of change the way that we're talking to them so that they know how professional we are. But again, anyone we know, I'm not going to hit it too many more times, but you get the point. So out of all of that, out of the people in our database, what makes up a lead from that? There is a difference.
Well, I guess one example, I was at an event last fall and just met the relative of one of my neighbors. And my little girl plays with their niece. So, you know, they connected, and I started talking to the aunt and uncle, and they mentioned that their lease was expiring in Raleigh. And I said, oh, well, where do you want to move to? And they told me this area. And so we started talking. I handed them my card. I said, you know, I'm an agent and happy to help you any way I can. You know, if you want information about the area or whatever, just let me know. And so they're actually my clients now. They don't want to move until April, but they are my clients, and we're kind of just keeping in contact a little. They want to start really looking next month. But that was a surprise. So I didn't expect that one, but that's one way to turn, you know, someone into a lead just by conversation with them. And when you hear that they're interested or thinking about making a life change, you know, that might be a good time to take that conversation in that direction.
Exactly. If there is an intent or some sort of motivation, right? They're moving to the area, they have to be here by a certain time. or there's a life change happening and they really need more space or they need less space. It's a financial ability to do that and an interaction, right? Like I could tell you all day long what my dream home is. I could tell you all about it, all of the criteria, but it's not as simple as just knowing the criteria, right? Like there's got to be some money behind it, first of all, and they need to be ready to pull the trigger at some point, maybe not tomorrow, but at some point they need to be ready. And so recognizing the intent, the motivation, and the financial ability, and then obviously building that relationship with them. So that means LP Model. Have you guys ever heard of this? If so, give me like a little hand raise or an icon raise. Who uses this in their business? I don't know. I came into the business at a brokerage that was very prospecting heavy. And so this was something that was really drilled into our heads. This was something that we learned. We would spend 2 days a week speaking in the conference room, scripting with one another. And some days we would spend entire days speaking on just one of these topics. And so what this is a breakdown of the most common information we need as criteria from our clients, but it goes above and beyond bathrooms and bedrooms and square footage, right? It gets into the nitty gritty and helps us understand what their timeline is, what their motivation is, and what their commitment to using us is. Because in doing all of this and recognizing all of this, we'll be able to understand when they're going to buy. It's going to help us organize them in our pipeline so that we know where to focus, what to kind of continue to pull out. And so these are talking points that we should be having with clients. And even if you've never heard of this before, I'm sure these are conversations you're already having. This is information you're already in the habit of getting, but this is just kind of a formal acronym for recognizing it. And so very often what I would do when I was heavy in production is I would literally print out a little piece of paper that said all of this: location, price, motivation, agent, mortgage, appointment, and listing. And so as I was having conversations with people, yes, I would write down their criteria, but I would really want to write down this information as well. And so when I was at my other brokerage, we would sit down and we would have entire days where we found different ways to ask questions that led to information relating to one of these topics. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. I'm going to talk about different ways to ask questions that get us to these topics. And then we'll talk about how we kind of weave all of that in. Now, the thing to keep in mind, which I think I'll say kind of towards right here, our goal is to gather little tidbits of it. And so as we start to recognize where people are in their timeline, we'll recognize maybe we need to hold some of this back. Maybe we need to save some of these questions so we have another reason to call them, right? If I know everything already, then when I call them the next time, it feels a lot more like, are you ready yet? Instead of inquiring and being inquisitive. And people love to talk about themselves, right? And so the more we can give them an opportunity to tell us about themselves, then the easier it will be for us to build that relationship. So let's kind of dive into each of these questions. And as I do this on the screen, I've provided some of the most common questions that I've used, but I would like to go ahead and just proactively say open forum. Please chime in for different ways that you ask these questions as well. Like I said, there's great value in hearing one another's script. So location is one of the easiest ones for us to get to, right? Anyone moving to the area, anyone that's been here already, they have a general idea. They might say, oh, I want to live in Raleigh, Durham, right? We heard that. Like, that's an airport, but yes, the Raleigh and Durham area. So when people are moving, I typically ask, all right, awesome, where do you want to be? Or have you thought at all about where you'd like to search? Wonderful. How did you learn about that area? Have you driven that area yet? Do you have family that lives there? Do you have family that lives in this area? If they're looking in a certain area that has maybe it might be the same city, but it has different vibes depending on where you are. I might ask if there's a certain zip code they want to stay within, right? People that are from the triangle and are looking in Cary, I might ask them, is there a certain zip code you want to be in? Because West Cary has a totally different feel than kind of the downtown area, right? We'll ask them, maybe, is there a certain place that you need to stay close to? Is there a certain place that you find yourself every day? Do you go into the office every day? If so, where is it? Do you have kids in school? Are you hoping to keep them in that school? Are you open to changing them around? And if any of those questions are yes, or let's say they travel regularly and so they're at the airport regularly, right? One of the most common questions I will ask, especially if they're not from the area, is there a maximum drive time that you want to stick within? Obviously, I want to get you in your ideal location, but if we need to look around, what else are you open to? Have you explored any of those, right? I think inventory and the realisticness of their criteria plays a lot into this question. If I'm having a conversation with people and they start telling me all of their criteria and they tell me they want a detached home, 4-bedroom, a 2-car garage, and they want it under 360, and they really want to be in Morrisville, right? And Morrisville tends to be very townhome heavy, and it's pretty pricey these days. And a 4-bedroom would be pretty hard to find. Would you be open to somewhere nearby within, a 20-minute drive to RTP? Would you be open to South Durham? Would you be open to, maybe Northwest Raleigh, right? Maybe I'll do a radius search and try to keep you as close as I can. I'd love to put you there, but I don't know how many options we'll have. And sometimes doing a little mock search will help set some expectations there. But those are the questions I like to ask. I really like to get behind their why. One of the women I used to work with used to always ask, what's your favorite grocery store? Right? She was a mom. She loved shopping at Whole Foods. That was like her vibe, right? And so if you are all about a local grocery store, you want to go to the farmer's market regularly, right? Things like that might say a little bit about where you should be living. What are some other questions that you guys ask people when you're figuring out their location?
I just wanted to say that when I first became an agent, I was really bad for when I had a potential buyer and they told me what they wanted, I'd be like, okay, we can find that, and that was the worst thing I could have ever said. And I actually lost a couple that was a client because we looked for probably a year at least, and I never could find what they wanted because what they wanted did not exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that, but I didn't want to discourage them. And so I had to really work on that because I am by nature an encourager, not a discourager. And so it was really hard for me to find the wording. But what you said was perfect, the way you just worded that. And I regret that to this day that I lost those clients because I gave them hope that we could find something that didn't exist. So I wasn't realistic with them. So I learned my lesson.
It happens. It happens. I always tell people, I want you to know that I hear your criteria and I understand it, and I will do everything I can to find that property. But, I want you to know that just because I understand it doesn't mean that the inventory will provide it. So I'm going to do a search and I'm going to provide you some insight based on that. That's totally valid. And I'll continue to circle back to this, but I know I mentioned it a second ago, but location is one of those ones that I really will continue to come back to. We'll talk about in a minute how we organize our pipeline, but just to make sure I've said it right. At some point, if I have a client that's further out, I know that they want to buy within the year, but they're definitely not a tomorrow person. It's going to be 6 months to a year before they are ready, right? And I've had a conversation about their criteria. I have them set up on a search. And I know that they want to be in Durham, right? I might just start with that. Kind of to your point, Brenda, I might entertain it a little bit and I'll say, well, all right, I think we might find that the inventory is going to be a little limited, but let's start with that. We'll set you up on a search. We'll see what we find. That gives me an opportunity to give them a call back in 3 weeks to check in and say, hey guys, I know we're still 11 months out, but I noticed that we're not really getting many options. And I can't make inventory magically appear, even though I understand what you're looking for. So I wanted to touch base again about your location. I know you really wanted to be in Durham, but would you be open to any other locations? Would you like me to do a little radius, or would you like me to add any other places to your search? Okay, awesome. I'll make that edit. Let's circle back in a few weeks and we'll see what those results are, right? I'm having a conversation. I am telling them that I have understood what they've said. And I'm making a plan for my next conversation with them. Price.
I think bringing solutions to, like you said, asking, would you be open to this? But also, if you're like, gosh, I know we're not going to find anything this, in their price point in this area, and bringing a solution. A lot of ways I word it is like, hey, humor me for a bit. Like, what about this? Or another one that I find works really well is if you are bringing something and you preface it with, I don't know if this is for you, but, and then give that to them, because then they're like, wait, well, why isn't it for me? It could be for me. So subconsciously, it typically does something that if you say those words, that will make them be like, oh, wait, let me check that out. Maybe it will be for me. You don't know what's for me, you know? So I find that one, or like, humor me. What about this area is a good one to use as well.
Oh, those are perfect. Yes, absolutely. Or just kind of throwing things out there and saying, well, hey, I saw this house the other day. I know it's not in the area you want to be in, but man, the floor plan just really looks great. Will you let me know what your thoughts are on the style? Then before you know it, they might actually be open to that area. Totally. I love those. Cool. Price obviously is what drives this entire purchase. But where that number comes from can be a little up in the air when they're first getting started. And so I'll start this conversation very casually. I'll kind of mention as we're going through the criteria, awesome, what are you hoping to spend? And what are you qualified for? I want you to know that I'm not here to spend all your money, right? Like the lower, the better. If we can find you the best house for the lowest price point, that is what I'm all about. But so I have an idea of what we're working with. Can you tell me what your budget is? And based on that budget, I'm going to be able to kind of educate you on what's happening in the market and how we need to shop. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to educate them, especially during COVID, for example, right? If your budget is 600, we're shopping at like 500 and under. Maybe right now we might be shopping a little closer to 6 or right at 6, or maybe a little above, right? I'm going to use that as an opportunity to talk about the market. If they don't have any idea yet, or they're like, well, I've been looking online and the houses that I really like are this price point. Awesome. That's a great starting point. Let's get you talking to a lender. But in the meantime, can you tell me what your current monthly payment is? And is that something that you're comfortable with? Or now, granted, we always want them to be lower, right? But if needed, would you be comfortable going up on a monthly basis? If so, what would that number be, right? If they do have a number in mind, we're going to ask them how they arrived at that number. Oh, online calculators are great. They're a great starting point. Unfortunately, they aren't really personalized. They don't really give us any insight into what your credit score is or what our debt to income ratios are, or even current rates, or if we're doing any buy downs. There's a ton of options for ways you can kind of buy down your rates for a year or 2 years, 3 years. And transparently, that's not my forte. So let's get you talking to a lender. Brenda, I saw you shaking your head. You're like, no, don't tell me you use an online calculator. I hear you. Again, we're going to use this as an opportunity just to see how realistic does this seem, right? There's only so much money we have, right? And so if our price point is what it is, then are we going to be able to find that in the location that you're looking for, or based on the criteria that you have? And it sounds like, Bryn, you might have had this type of conversation before based on your like humor me conversation, right? But sometimes we'll go to people and we'll say, all right, I hear you. This is your criteria. I'm thinking we need to do one of two things. We're either going to need to look in a different area, or we're going to need to adjust your price, because I've looked in our criteria and you're getting the alerts that you're not liking any of those. I'm seeing some of the houses that are really checking your boxes, but they're 50K higher, right? I'm not here to push up your budget, but I just want you to be educated in understanding what we can expect in terms of inventory, right? What else are you guys running into when you have conversations about price? I know sometimes it can seem a little intimidating to have that conversation because we're getting into people's finances, right? But we're a professional. We're not here to open doors. I need to know that we've got a budget to work with, because if we don't, then are we really shopping?
I met with the first time home buyer last week, and she looked at me after she showed me her credit score, and she showed me like what showed up, and there were a lot of delinquent things. And my eyes must have gotten big. And she said, do you even want to work with me? And I said, yes, I do, but I have to put you in touch with my lender, which then my lender knew some people that can do some credit repair, so I just said, hey, here's the process of, let's get you with a lender, let's do some credit repair and then get your credit score up so that you do qualify for a loan. And she's like, okay, but I think a lot of first time home buyers are nervous and they don't know the process. but then also just being able to talk to them and say, hey, you can't go out and buy furniture. And, you know, one of the reasons I love real estate is just like, it's a chance to build wealth, but you know, you've got to do certain things to get to that point to be able to afford it.
Yeah.
So no more eyelashes and nails, and you know, you kind of joking with a person in that age range. It's like, okay, I get it. I was like, start giving up some things and pay this debt off, you know.
Yeah. I know it. That'll save you $300 a month if you cut out some of those things for sure. No, I mean, it takes a moment to kind of take the ego out of it, right? It can feel like a personal attack, or it can feel like it's, you don't want to share, right? It can be a little embarrassing, but like, we all have a budget. We can all only spend so much, but having that opportunity to give them insight into how we can come to a solution. I mean, that's one of the best ways we can continue to build value. And I mean, I spent the majority of my business when I was first getting started for years focusing on first-time home buyers. Like when I was doing Zillow leads, I was buying them. This was back when you actually could, but buying them in an area that I knew was kind of a lower price point, because I knew those were going to be first-time home buyers likely. And I knew I could provide a ton of value in just educating them about the process. And if they needed help in getting qualified, just to your point, Renew, like you actually stuck in it with them. You weren't just waiting for like, no, sorry, you're not ready. On to the next one, right? Like we see their value in their future. And everyone wants to have that. Yep. There's no true way in terms of the organization of it. I probably should have put mortgage next, just because according to this conversation, exactly, it is the easiest way to kind of streamline going from price into mortgage. We'll get to that in just a moment. But the other thing we want to explore is their motivation, because we can talk all day about moving, but if I have no reason to, if my house works perfectly fine for me, if I'm an investor and I don't need anything, right? If I'm not doing a 1031 exchange and have to buy within a certain date, other than that, I have no motivation, then am I truly a buyer? I could be. But if I, as an agent, am spending a lot of time with this person and they don't have any motivation, I could be spending a lot of time with them without results. And would that time be better spent with another client that actually does have some motivation, right? So these are the types of questions and comments, as Brenda was saying, that we're kind of keeping an ear out for as a hand raise, right? They're moving to the area. What is their reason for their move? Is it a location thing? Do they need to be closer to work? Is it too far of a drive to the airport once a week? Or are they moving from out of state and they have to be here by a certain date because work starts? Or they absolutely want to be in their new house by the end of summer because they want the kids to be settled before school starts, right? We are looking for that. They're getting married. They're expecting a new child soon, and we only have a 1-bedroom. This is not going to work. We need to go ahead and move. Or they're empty nesters now, whatever the case may be. Maybe we now need a 1-level home. There's a ton of opportunities for us, but what is that motivation? And based on that motivation, what timeline does that create for us? Exactly like I said. Also, the other thing we can kind of keep an ear out for is, do they have a lease? And when does that lease end? Because we can be talking to our friends and they'll mention like, I'm like trying to figure out where I'm going to go, right? In their mind, they might be thinking of another apartment, but you never know. If we start having a conversation with them about approvals and what's happening in the market and the fact that you actually can get some stuff for below list price these days, that might change, right? And if I'm talking to my friends that are paying $2,000 a month for their apartment, and honey, my mortgage payment is $1,500, doesn't that sound good to you to own a house? Now, granted, I bought a few years ago, so my interest rates were different, but we could get you something that's around the same price as what you're paying already, and you own it. You can build wealth that way. What are some of the other motivations that you guys have heard from people that you've spoken to?
Okay, I would just like to piggyback on that too, because when it comes to timeline, a lot of people either don't know or they don't want to tell you upfront because they don't want you to like pounce on them if they're like, yeah, we could move now.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, we're just looking maybe 6 months. But another way when people tell you that to help calibrate their timeline is to be like, you know, if the perfect house came on the market tomorrow, would you want to move forward with it? And then usually they'll be like, yeah, maybe, or they'll be like, no, we really have, like, we can't because we have work, or we don't want to pay to get out of a lease. And then, you know, a better calibration of their timeline and what makes sense for them.
Absolutely. And using their motivation to work backwards in a timeline is the best way you can kind of build your business, because it does sound salesy, but at the same time, when you say it, you're like, man, I'm actually not wrong, right? Like, if you want to buy at the end of this year, awesome. I totally hear you. I'm not sure what interest rates are going to do. Are you open to breaking your lease? Exactly to your point. Are you open to breaking your lease if the perfect house came up? Probably not. Okay, totally understand. I get that. Money is money, right? But that said, let's go ahead and just start you on a search, because buying a house can be overwhelming. And at the very least, I want you to get comfortable with what our market has to offer. So I'm going to set you up on a search, right? And if they're a year out, I might go ahead and do that. But if they're 6 months out, I might say, hey, if that's the case, if you say your timeline is 6 months, first of all, does that mean that's when you want to start looking, or is that when you want to be in your home? There's a difference, right? If you want to be in your home by July, that means we need to be under contract by June, which means we probably need to start searching around April, May, the latest. But we might have some financial work to do in the meantime. So why don't we sit down? Let's schedule a time to meet at my office. And I'm going to talk about the process. I'm going to answer any questions that you have. I'm going to go over what you can expect. I'll tell you what's happening in the market. And I'll talk about what the different deposits are, inspections, other financial commitments that come with this process, so you can be educated and start preparing for it. Because the last thing that I, as an agent, want is for us to get to your timeline and you feel unprepared, or to realize that there's something we could have done in this meantime to get your credit score up or to better qualify you. So why don't we meet next week and we'll go over all of that, right? It sounds very pushy to them, but at the same time, I'm not wrong, right? This is stuff that they do need to know. If they need to be saving a $20,000, that's a lot in 3 months. Can you make it happen, right? Like, if someone, for instance, is getting a VA loan, they hear 0% down, they think they're not bringing any money to closing. Understandably, that's what I thought, like zero sounds like zero, right? But no, we've got closing costs, we've got inspections. If you're not ready for that, I don't want to be telling you when we're already looking at houses and you've gotten excited, right? I want to be telling you now so we can prepare for it. And also it builds that value. And like Renew said, it's showing them that commitment over the long run. We're committed to them and we're committed to helping them get there. We're not waiting for it to be tomorrow.
Just a quick question, a quick follow-up for you, Kate. So I'm imagining myself having that conversation with someone who, like, for example, I did an open house and one of the people that came to the open house wanted to find a place closer to downtown Raleigh because their kid was going to be in school in one of the private schools near Raleigh, downtown Raleigh. So I'm imagining having that conversation with them and what kind, like when they start giving you the pushback, like, we've already done this before, we already know what this process is like, we know what we want. I mean, your conversation sounds really good. Like, how do you like encourage them to sit down and think about that? And secondly, and more importantly, like, would you have that conversation with someone who's not a client? Especially, obviously we're talking about buyers here. So maybe it is the first conversation you have at an open house. Would you say, why don't we sit down and talk about it? And are you going to then talk about buyer's agency in that conversation? Or would you just have this conversation and then talk about buyer's agency later? I guess I'm wondering about the nature of the relationship at this point.
Mm-hmm. Great question. Totally understand.
Right? You're just talking about a lead.
Mm-hmm. So first and foremost, personal preference and whatever you're comfortable with. My opinion would be, I would wait to bring up buyer agency. Now, granted, different people have different opinions about that. I have always been of the mindset that I want you to see my value and I want us to work together. I want us to want to work together. And I don't want you to feel pressured to do that. But that's personal opinion. I will say though, it's understandable to get that pushback transparently. That's why, as I said, I focused on first-time buyers because it was easier to build that relationship. And then once they buy down the road, I already have it, right? But for someone like that, I would probably say, I hear you. When did you purchase before? How long ago was it? Because sometimes they might have bought in another state, or they might have bought 20 years ago and due diligence was like I don't even know if it was a thing, right? And asking them did you pay due diligence when you purchased? Ask questions that give them an opportunity to tell you about their experience. Wonderful. How long were you guys looking? Is there any feedback you wish you could give that agent? I want you to know I'm here for you guys, right? I would just recommend that we sit down, and I understand if you know the process. I just don't ever want to make assumptions. And I don't want to make an assumption about what that other agent might have told you or what that process might have looked like to you. It very well could be the same thing and we could breeze right through it. But this is one of the largest financial decisions you're going to make. And I don't take that lightly. And I don't want us to just be going into homes. I want you to have heard from me what's actively happening in the market, what common deposits are and things of that sort. And if we're on the same page, amazing. You're miles ahead of all my other clients. But especially if you're purchasing a big one, like I want to make sure we're on the same page. I'll just leave it. And I mean, they might continue to give pushback, and that's fine. I mean, I have some luxury clients that I think I met them off Zillow. I don't even remember, but I don't think I ever sat down and had a formal buyer consult with them, even though I tried to do that with all my clients. They've bought before, they know the process. And so I just made a point of, when we're in the homes, I'm really listening to them and their criteria. And we're just regularly talking about, do I think this would appraise or not? And things like that. And so in that conversation, I'm having an opportunity to talk about due diligence and things like that. And then that way, if they give any pushback on it, I can say, well, let's talk about that. What did that look like for you? And here's how it's currently going. Yeah. You got to just feel it out. There's some people that are definitely going to get pushback. It'll be hard, but that's fine. If they already know, just continue to push on it. But just know, I just repeatedly say, these are deposits you're not going to get back. And so I want to make sure we're on the same page. And so definitely before you write an offer for them, then I'll have that conversation of like, let's make sure we understand. I just have to, for the sake of my disclosure, I have to make sure I've said this. All right, leading into that, I also like to make sure I understand if they are working with another agent, right? This is one of those ones that I kind of dance around. It kind of depends on the situation. If they're an open house lead, I'm absolutely asking this question. Are you guys working with anyone? Have you seen any other houses? If so, how did you see them? Have you just been going to open houses? Amazing. That's a great place to start, right? And you're like, oh no, we've seen a few. Wonderful. Who did you see them with? Have you signed anything with that agent? I don't want to step on any toes. You want to always be asking them if they've signed anything. And then, but that's why I always say, oh, so are you familiar with the process? Have you done a buyer consultation at any point? Have you purchased a home in another state? I know I already mentioned this, but I love asking the question of, especially if I know that they've purchased previously, I love asking. I'm a feedback-based person. I want to make sure that I'm working for you the best that I can, but I know everyone's communication style is different. Is there any feedback you wish you could give to that agent that you weren't able to? Right? Like we are instantly getting to that pain point and setting ourselves up for success and knowing what they expect. But we don't want to be working with someone and then they're like, all right, wonderful. I'm going to call my agent. I'm sorry, what? That has happened to me. It's happened to all of us at some point, but that's okay. Even if they'd signed agency, I don't know if I want to work with that anyways, right? If you're willing to jump ship like that. What are some of the other conversations you guys have had for asking people about agency? Do most of you guys wait to get agency signed until you're kind of sure about the client or until you guys write an offer, or what does that conversation look like?
Yeah, I am really curious about this. So please share, because this is one of the things when I was doing open houses, every single person had some kind of a pushback. And so for me, I don't want to waste time with people. I don't want to put them on the MLS leads. I don't want to, so my time is precious. How do you get people serious about it?
For me,
I'll say that I have a sign-in sheet at open houses that I've downloaded, and then if they check that they don't have an agent, then I'll add them into my KvCore database so that I can say, okay, this is the price range you're looking at. I usually have a conversation with everyone and then say, would you like for me to set you up on alert? Whether they sign with me as an agent or not, at least they're in my database and getting alerts and emails from me. And then as far as like the agency document, I kind of wait until I'm sure that they're my client. I explain it, but I also, I have them sign everything when they're ready to roll.
I think that's a great point, Renew. Of
It's
assume
difficult for anybody to want to sign. I think it's difficult for anybody to want to sign if they don't know your value. So I'd found when I was getting leads, and sometimes, I was like, oh, I don't want to, go show this house, and, not until they sign with me. And it's like, they don't know me, so why would they sign? So for me, it was easier to provide that value. And up front, after, if I'm given a consult, I would send the documents over ahead of time and be like, I want y'all to have time to like look over these documents. I don't want to ask you to sign anything as soon as I send them over. So read over these, let me know if you have questions, and then setting them up and knowing that, hey, like for me, I typically will show one house with somebody because I want them to get a feel for me. And then I'll let them know ahead of time, like, hey, like, we'll look at this one house. If you think I'm a good fit, if we think that we could work well together, then I'll ask you to sign agency at that point. And I think letting them know and just setting that expectation up front can be really beneficial.
That's a great point, Brent. One of the things, and we'll talk about buyer consultations in a few classes, but that's one of the things that I do is in my buyer consultation, I bring with me a copy of the MLS sheet and the disclosures and likely a CMA of one of the houses that either we've seen or that they've sent me as like a favorite, right? Just to give them a point of reference. I'll say, this is what we're going to be looking at when we're in the homes. This is how I'll explain all of this to you. This is how I evaluate what we could expect on inspections or whether it could appraise or not. And this is what each of those things means in terms of your financing. And then here's some of the documents you can expect to see as we go through this process. The first one is agency. I'm not going to ask you to sign that today, but after a house or two, I am going to have you do that, mainly because it's something we're going to need in your file for us to write an offer. And I'm a full-time professional. I take this very seriously. I'm fully committed to you. I just want to make sure all of our files are in order so that we're ready to jump when the time comes. And same thing as what Brinson, just kind of keep it moving, right? But give them the opportunity and set the expectation that it's coming. Renew made a good point when she was talking about the open house stuff, right? Like we need to recognize that people are raising their hand to be communicated with. They know that we are hosting this open house. We are inviting them in. That comes with a certain level of expectation in return, right? They don't have to provide their information, but if they've provided their information, that's enough for me to say, all right, I'm putting them in my database. They might not have had a warm, fuzzy conversation with me, but at some point they might. One of our agents, Larisha, she did an open house for me. I'm trying to see, she's not on right now. She did an open house for me a few months ago, had kind of a decent conversation with someone, went ahead and secured an appointment at a house right down the street after the open house, had a good conversation with them, and then they kind of went silent. I put them in KvCore, set them up on a search, and a few months later, earlier this week, they reached out and said, hey, we're in town, we're ready to see some houses, right? So just because they don't engage with us right now doesn't mean they won't in the future. And if they're walking into our open house, then they know that they are expecting to have a real estate conversation with an agent because it's not going to be vacant. So that's what we're here for. Brenda, did you have one more thing to add?
No, I was basically going to say what Brendan said. I show one, maybe two houses, but I just have those conversations as I'm showing the house, that I don't know, just I don't even know how to explain it right now, but the conversation just leads that way. In order for, if you decide to make an offer, then you need the agency representation. And it really depends on who they are, to be honest with you. If they're a good friend and I know them, that's probably going to be when we decide to make an offer. We've already talked about everything. But, like my neighbor's family that I don't know that well, we meet and we talk and we go ahead and get that agency agreement signed. And I'll let them know it's just it's for their benefit as well as mine. It allows us to have open communication with each other and disclose confidential information with each other that, then I hold that confidential information for them and use that to search for their home. So, and I'm not wording any of that well right now, but I do have a script that I use when I'm speaking to them. And it really, again, just depends on who they are. If it's, I sold a house to my nephew, that was a whole different selling a house to my neighbor's family. So just depends.
Yeah, that's a valid point. And I mean, totally read the room. I do the same exact thing. I think two things. One, scarcity creates value, right? So if we're getting to know them and we're trying to figure out, like, they seem like they kind of go hot and cold, I might say, you know, I'm a real estate professional. I take this job very seriously. This is my full-time job. I want you to know that I'm fully committed to you, but I'm very specific about the clients that I take on. And so our next step is for me to get buyer agency signed. I'm going to go ahead and send that over to you tonight. So you'll be expecting that. I'll go ahead and I'll book those appointments for the weekend. You guys have any questions? Right. If I don't make a big deal out of it, then they're not going to, or they're going to have to backtrack and be like, wait, what's that? I don't typically use this script because I haven't used it, I'm not the best at it. And I think it can come off a little fearful, and I don't like to sell people based on like intimidation, I guess, in essence. But if you get the verbiage right, it can totally hit the point. But kind of to what Brenda was saying, I know Ashley Denny uses the script something along the lines of, you know, in North Carolina, until buyer agency is signed, we as agents, we all work for the seller. And so if I'm going to be having financial conversations with you, I want to be keeping all of that confidential. And that's not to say I'm going to be out here sharing all your info, right? But technically speaking, until that's signed, every agent works for the seller. So let's go ahead and get our file in order. We're going to go ahead and blah, 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 right? I don't know if that's necessarily what I would use, but just know that that is actually true, right? Which is one of the things that's kind of explained to them in both buyer agency and working with real estate agents. All right, mortgage. It's our job to pass them off, right? It's not our job to know all of that information or what they're going to qualify for. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about when we go into the mortgage classes. What does that seamless pass off look like? But having a conversation about price is one of the easiest ways to streamline the conversation into mortgage. Wonderful. You know, how'd you arrive at that number? Online calculator. Great. All right. Next step, let's get you talking to an actual lender, right? There's a lender that I recommend. Her name is Allie Ganley. She is amazing for so many reasons. First and foremost, she is amazing with my clients. I have sent her a ton of people, and she is incredible with how she works with them. She is diligent. She always keeps you up to speed. She stays on track with her timelines. And in a situation where things can be at risk, like deposits or closing timelines can be at risk based on other people's timelines, especially mortgages, I want to make sure we're really staying ahead of the game. Also, she's local. So if anything comes up and I can't get a hold of her, then I know where to find her. But that said, more than that, I can get a hold of her, right? The biggest concern I have with .com lenders or even large banks is you are a number. And with this being your largest financial transaction of a lifetime, very often, I don't want you to be a number. I want to make sure that we are evaluating every single option and that you actively understand what's going on. And the lenders that I refer my clients to take the same approach that I do, and that our job is to be a resource. We're not here to sell you. We're here to tell you what all of your options are and to make sure you understand all of them. And so I'm going to connect you with a lender, and they're going to answer any questions that you have. They're also going to get you approved, which is going to give us an idea of what you can spend. Whether we go with that full amount or not, it's totally up to you, but that will give us a starting point. And with any offer, we're going to need a pre-approval. So let's go ahead and get that taken care of. We're not going to go into any houses until we have that. I like to ask them, have you spoken to a lender yet? Obviously. Wonderful. If so, who? A lot of people start with their bank. That's very understandable. If that's where all of your accounts are, it does make a lot of sense. I will say transparently, just because your accounts with them does not make that process any different. You're still going to have to download all of your statements and send it to them, even though it doesn't make sense. Even though it would seem like they can just hop on and download them for you, you have to send it. So it's not really going to save us any time in that regard. And banks have very specific products that they can use, whereas brokers and outside lenders can normally shop the options for you. I'm not here to sell you on any of them, but I want you to know what your options are. You should be shopping. Financing is the largest part of this transaction. So we should be exploring our options and shopping them. I also want my clients to understand how different loan structures appear to sellers. Money is money. As long as we can get to closing, it's kind of all the same. But if we're competing against other offers, I want you to understand how different loan terms can appear. And if we're on the brink of having two options, I want you to know what those look like and which way you want to go. And will we be needing any closing costs? Because that's dramatically going to affect how we structure our offer, right? And I was talking with one of our agents the other day, and she'd sent me a house that she was going to be showing some of her clients that this past weekend. And she wanted my opinion on how it was priced. And so we were running a CMA, and, you know, it wasn't an open door property, but it was something similar to that. And I could tell it was overpriced. And so we were having a conversation about how to script that with the client, and come to find out this was the client that she picked up at an open house. So they were just starting their search again. They hadn't really had the financing conversation. They were approved with another lender, but how much cash they have on hand and things like that was unknown. And so I told her, you know, really and truly, we need to understand their finances before we understand how to advise them. Because if this house is overpriced and they don't have the money to bridge the gap, then that's a very different conversation than if they do. And how we explain all of this to them, especially one of the first times that we're meeting them. What are some of the other ways that you guys have conversations about mortgages, or what is the common script that you use for introducing clients to lenders?
Well, with Allie, I just, I tell my clients, I used her, you know, to refinance my house, and she was awesome to work with. And I just explain my experience. So that helps with that. And then it is, I'm still learning that too. I'm still trying to reach the wording. And I was just sitting here thinking, I'm going to pull this video up later and copy down exactly what you said, because it is difficult for me to find the words to explain to them. You know, every lender is different, and your closing costs can vary. And the APR can look great, but you know, the closing costs can vary. And I just had this conversation with one of my clients who made an offer on a home last night. And she's, you know, thinking she doesn't have to bring anything to closing. And I'm like, well, you know, this is what I believe you're going to have to bring to closing. Let's give your lender a call, and let's see what they have to say, because she is using one of those online brokers, you know, and so I'm just not that familiar with them. And she did not want to switch at the beginning of this process. She was very happy with them. So it's different working with them. And we do have to kind of work hard to get them on the phone and get some answers out of them. So, and honestly, and this is, you know, what he told her. He's the lender, and this is what I told her. I said that has not been my experience, but if that's what he's telling you, he is the lender, and hopefully he will give you an estimate in writing once we get a copy of this contract to him, so you'll know exactly what you need to bring to closing. I really think he's telling her a very low number that's not accurate, but I'm not the lender, so I don't know. I've never seen closing costs that low before with an FHA loan. And it was very difficult for me because of the way he was wording things to get her to understand that the down payment is, you know, in addition to that closing costs. So anyway, it was fun last night.
Yeah.
Like this.
I don't want to spend too much time talking about lending because we'll do a whole class on it, but same situation. I had a .com lender, and I've had a few where it worked out fine. It wasn't my favorite situation, but it got there, you know, but I did have one situation where I picked up some clients from either an open house or online. And so long story short, I was trying to build value, right? I'm trying to build this relationship with them. They went with the .com lender, and that lender then told them, after I'd had a full buyer consult with them and explained the different deposits and why they would be at risk at different times in the contract, then told them that if it didn't appraise, or if we didn't come to terms on these inspections, that they could terminate and get their deposit back. Dude, what? Are you kidding me? No, they can't, right? Like, this lender is in some other state, far away, and I'm sure that their contract is like that, but our contract is not like that. And so I want to be setting them up for success. One of the parts of having a local lender is that they are specific to our contracts and they recognize what's currently happening. And I think the thing that we need to get at here is really and truly, if we're talking about intent and where different people fall, then this is really and truly, like, if this is their intention, right? If they're not willing to speak with the lender, then they aren't committed to getting there. They're not ready to buy. We've already talked about all that, the different benefits. And then we want to be booking an appointment, right? Same thing as what I just said with the lending. These are different thresholds for their commitment of working with us. We are professionals. We take what we do very seriously. I'm not here to just open doors. I'm here to get you to closing. And so if we're going to be getting to closing, we need to understand what this process looks like. We need to understand what the deposits are that go into this process. what's going to be due at different points, what's refundable, what's not. And I want to make sure I'm answering any questions you have on the forefront. And I want you to know that I'm a feedback-based person. So I want us to start off on the right foot. I want us to start off by me providing answers to any questions that you have. And I want you to know that that's the stance I'll take throughout this entire process. Let's go ahead and sit down and go over all of this. Because when we're in the homes, I want you to fully focus on what's in front of you. I want you to kind of go through the flow of your life and see if the functionality of this home would work for you. I want to hear from you what you like and what you don't like. I don't want us to be bogged down by making sure we're talking about the process as a whole. Let's do that on the front end so we can have fun while we're shopping. And also, this can be very stressful, right? It's fun when you're first looking, but it can be very stressful. And so I want us to get in the habit of having a conversation about this process very regularly, because the more we talk about it, the easier it will be as we go through it. It still be stressful, but if we can get used to having this conversation, then at least you know what to expect. I don't want anything we say to be the first time you're hearing it when we go under contract. And I want to make sure they're going to use me, right? If I'm just forever opening doors and dropping in little tidbits, I'm not setting myself up for success when they go under contract. And do they really understand this non-refundable deposit and inspections and appraisal if they're distracted? Well, yeah, right? Did you hear me? I don't know, right? It'll give us an opportunity to set expectations. And I know I talked about this in the getting started class, but it really helps us set the expectation of how professional we are and how we expect to be communicated with. I talked about it in our first class of set hours for yourselves. This is a great time to set expectations. I'm a full-time agent. That means that I work Monday through Friday from about 9 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. I understand that we need to get in the door as soon as possible, but I really try to get 24 hours notice. I can't always jump up at the second's notice to get us in the door. I will show homes on Saturday by appointment only. And Sundays, I really don't work. And we'll talk about all that, right? Like I'm using these as opportunities to set expectations with them. Now, granted, how we met the client plays a big role in how much success we'll see with this, right? If I met them at an open house or I met them on Zillow, I might have to just get them in the door. And I might need to sit down at the kitchen table if it's a vacant house and go over the process there, or do it on the trunk of my car. Or start to have a few conversations about it and say, let's meet at my office next week. We've got a lot more to discuss, but this is a good starting point. Versus if they're in my SOI and I already know them well, I'm like, look, love it, let's get going. But beforehand, let's meet at my office. It just depends on who they are. And then listing. Do they have a home to sell? If so, do they need to sell it before they buy? Are you in a position where we can close on your purchase before we close on the sale? Are you hoping that we can move everything into your new house before we list your current one? Do you need to sell to buy? And are you going to be living there while we're doing showings? What does that look like for you? I don't want to spend too much time talking about our listings, but if you work from home, are you going to be able to accommodate those showings? When would you like to be shopping? It can be a little hard to time things up. And in this market, things are sitting a little bit longer. So I think we probably need to go ahead and get your home ready, get it on the market. And then once we start to get some traction, then we start looking ourselves. Are you comfortable with that? If we can't find the perfect house, by the time that your home sells, would you have somewhere to stay temporarily? All of this plays a role in our timeline. All right, I'm going to speed through some of these a little bit because I know we're getting there in time. So now that we have all of that information, this is what we're going to use in order to categorize our leads. Now, there is no one way to do this. The way that I'm going to explain it to you is how I learned when I first got into the business. I will also drop little tidbits in there on how I organize people now within my business, because it's changed a little bit based on my comfort level and confidence, and because I feel like I can be a little more exclusive in who I say yes to. In my opinion, leads fall into about 6 categories. We've got new prospects, people that we are qualifying, and then we have A's, B's, C's, and D's. Not hard to remember. Now, in my opinion, a prospect is someone that is simply an opportunity. They're not someone that we have spoken to yet. We might have met them at an open house just in passing. We've gotten their contact info and that was it, right? In my opinion, that is not a conversation really. Or this could be an internet lead, or a friend has told us that their neighbor is moving and they want to connect us. They've sent us their contact info, but we haven't spoken to them or reached out yet. All we know is that to some extent, this person has raised their hand and say, I want to buy or sell. Once we have reached out to them, they will then be moved into our qualify category. We haven't reached them, but we have tried to. And we've put a plan in place for when our next outreach will be. We likely have them on an e-alert or drip. The only difference between the two is our outreach. Now, when we're doing qualify, once we've gotten a contact that's ready to buy or sell, I'm picking up the phone, I'm calling them. I know I might be old school. I am that commercial that's like millennials are turning into their parents. I leave voicemails, I don't care. And then I follow up with a text, that's right. Right? Like both things. You're going to get the transcription of my voicemail and you're going to get my text. Whatever is your rhythm, right? But to some extent, we're doing some outreach. And recognize how many spam calls people get. They're probably not going to answer some random phone call. Make sure you're providing context on who you are and a reason for them to reach back out. I digress. All right. Then we have our A's. Now, when we're talking about our pipeline, my whole thought process is, when can I count on them for a contract? And can I count on them to use me as an agent? A's are my next contract. They are people that I know are ready, willing, and able to buy, and that they will use me, and that they're in a financial position to do so. They are fully qualified. At any second, we could be seeing the house and writing an offer. So their timeline is ASAP, but realistically in the next 1 to 3 months. I like to plan things by quarters. It's hard to know when things will close. When I'm talking about my clients, I am talking about when I can expect them to write an offer, right? New construction, I can have no idea when that's going to close, but I can tell you when someone wants to start shopping or when they want to go under contract. These are people I'm talking to very regularly, every few days. I'm very familiar with their criteria. We've shopped a lot. I can tell what layouts they like, what cabinet colors they like, things like that. We are actively writing offers. I've got their pre-approval or proof of funds in hand in their file. They've signed agency, or they're in my SOI and they will sign it when we write our offer, right? These are people we can count on. And I would like to point out that these are people that have a realistic criteria. They can be hot and heavy and totally ready to buy, but if there's no homes for them, they're not our next contract, are they? Right? Having a realistic expectation and availability and inventory for what they're looking for plays a big role here. Our Bs are our up next. These are the people that once these other people go under contract in the next few months, these are the people that are going to be purchasing. They're people I'm still kind of nurturing, but in essence, that relationship is there. We've really built that rapport. I know that they're going to use me. We're talking every few weeks. If something comes up, I'm still sending them hand-selected listings. They're mainly focused on searches, on e-alerts, but if the perfect house comes up, I'm texting it to them as a little nugget. Hey guys, I know we're still a few months out, but I saw this one. It's really nice. What do you think about that backyard? Right? I'm using opportunities to keep that engagement with them. They probably tour occasionally. They may have written an offer and then decided to wait a few months or something like that. They're likely approved or in the home stretch of being approved, or they're basically there, but because of their timeline, we don't want to fully pull credit, or we don't want to fully commit quite yet. We don't want to pull the trigger too soon, right? Qualification letters only last 60 to 90 days. So they're very close to that. They may have signed agency, but probably not. But in general, we know we can count on them. I would like to remind you that investors will live in this category. They can be a B+, but they will never be an A, right? We can never truly count on them because they are not truly motivated. There's nothing emotionally tethering them to this. They very well could be, like I said before, a 1031 exchange where they have a specific timeline. But even then, right, there's no emotional tie to a house when they walk in. It's all about the functionality of it. It's about the numbers. And I'd like to remind you that that can be quite time consuming to run numbers on every house in terms of, obviously we're going to run CMAs and things like that all the time, but in terms of rental ability and things like that, man, that's pretty time consuming. Investors will live here. And then we have our watches. These are people that to some extent we have a relationship with. We know they are going to buy in the next year. So if A's are 1 to 3 months and B's are 3 to 6 months, then our C's are going to be those 6 to 12 months out people. We're talking every few weeks, about once a month until it starts to get closer. These are the, in my opinion, these are the fun ones. I don't know, maybe I'm just a cheesy salesperson. I love the nurture. I love like building that relationship from nothing and showing them that I'm going to continue to follow up because it makes it so much more worth it at the end. They might have looked a few times, but they're currently mainly looking online. They're kind of getting a feel for things. They will likely use us, but it's not yet confirmed. Our focus here is on building relationships. And then our D leads. These are people that are in our database to some extent. They might want to buy. Mainly, we just have their contact information, though. They're just random people that we've acquired here and there. We don't want to totally drop them off our radar. We might have them on a drip or an e-alert, but we're not really reaching out to them unless they like flag something or they're back on our site after 8 months of not being on there, right? We don't want to forget about them, but if they wake up, we'll say, hey. So when in doubt, we're going to ask all of our people, what is their timeline? Can I count on them to use me as an agent? And when can I expect their contract? So I'm going to give a few examples real quick. I know we're running up on time, so I'm going to kind of fly through these, and then I want us to hop on KvCore because I know a lot of you had some questions on that, and I want to make sure we're spending time. So real quick, a few examples. These are from my past. Sunny was a referral friend of mine. His sister was a good friend. He lived in Chicago. He's going to be moving down here. I'd been working with him for about a year. I knew his criteria very well. We had seen, 60 houses. That's not my normal situation, but you can tell we were in there. We communicated every few days. We toured houses about once a week. And he was ready to pull the trigger at any moment. He just had a very specific criteria. In my opinion, he was an A. Now, because of how specific his criteria was, there were some points where I was bumping him down to a B+, right? If inventory is not there, you're not truly an A. But at that time, he was. Someone like Makisha, I got her through Zillow. We completed a showing and did a little mini consult while we were there. I wasn't really able to convert them into an appointment at my office. She'll normally answer the call, would look online, but they were waiting for a lease to end. In the meantime, they were doing some financial work, doing some credit repair. I had a general knowledge of their criteria, but hadn't really gotten a feel for it in person. In my opinion, that was a C. Are there any people in your database that you have questions about where they fall? And does anyone want to share any of those as an example? It's up to you. Well, I don't want to spend too much time on this. Meet me offline if you want to do a deep dive of your pipeline and really organize it. I'm a firm believer in doing this. And by the end of all of this, even if you organize everything in your KvCore, I think there's great value in taking a step back and saying, how many A's do I have? How many B's do I have? And how many C's do I have? Because if I have 1 A, but I've got 8 B's, then I can be very confident that my year is looking pretty good, right? But if I have 3 A's and 1 B, oof, I've got some nurturing to do on my C's because I am a little worried about where my next contract is coming from. The more we can get used to keeping count of those, then the more we recognize that we are actively participating in the organization of our database, and it makes those ebbs and flows a lot easier. All right, so now let's talk about KvCore. I'm going to give you the short and sweet of it. Who here, I just want to get a feel for what we're working with. Who here is like very active on KvCore, and who here is like, I know nothing? Kind of give me a feel for where we are in terms of your understanding of it and your comfort level, because I don't want to spend time talking about stuff that you obviously know.
I just use mine mainly to set up alerts for my clients or people who aren't yet clients, but just want to look. That's all I've used it for so far.
Okay.
And then those dumb automatic alerts that I don't know how to turn off. So I'm hoping you show us how to turn those off.
LOL. Yes, absolutely. I can do that. Understandable. Is anyone totally like doesn't even use it at all? We have in the chat. I have not used it, Marta. Okay, cool. All right. I'm going to give you the short and sweet of the dashboard, and then we'll hop into a little functionality of it. When you hop on your KvCore, this is what you will see. The main thing being up at the top are any emails. If you connect it with your Gmail, it will show you messages. It will also have notifications of things that you should do. So based on either tasks that you have put in for yourself or based on different drip campaigns, which we'll talk about in a minute, there might be certain tasks that are built in. And so as tasks come up, you will be notified. So if you get in the habit of using your CRM regularly, when you first sign on, this is where you should kind of first check. You'll then have a view of recent activity. So you can see different things that have been sent out. As you will see, Brenda, you will see all those automated texts. Sorry, y'all. I do text people regularly, but I do have it set up so that when it's someone's birthday, they get a text from me. I apologize. Now, this is the part that I really, really love, though. On your dashboard, when you scroll down, and keep in mind, I have admin access. So if you see your clients on here, please know I'm not actively targeting them. I just see everyone's database, right? But on the bottom of your dashboard, it will show you the properties that have been looked at recently, the client that is looking at it, and the way they have viewed it and the number of times. This is very valuable because, like I said, it gives us an indication of A, have they favorited something? Or is it something that's kind of hot on their target list? Is there someone that I haven't seen in forever, like they haven't been on my site in months, and out of nowhere, I start seeing their name come up and they've looked at 5 houses and one of them has 3 views or something? Oh, I'm going to reach out to that person. In my opinion, that's a hand raise. I'm going to give them a call and say, hey, it's been a while. I saw you're back on my site. Can you tell me what's going on? Is your home search becoming more serious? Do you guys have a timeline now? Tell me what's happening in your world, right? Or if I can see that they've looked at something 2 or 3 times, maybe I'll send them a text and say, hey, I've been keeping an eye on things. There's been a lot of good houses that have come up lately, but there's this one that really caught my eye for you. Think you'd really like it, and send them a text with this link. They're going to respond and be like, oh my gosh, I was just looking at that this morning. Wild. Let's go look at it, right? I know that. That's why I sent it to them, but they might not know that, right? So from there, it provides a lot of insight into where people are looking. If someone's looking at some stuff that's well above their price point, for example, might give you an opportunity to reach out. And again, we're using these as reasons to circle back to our LP Mama, LP Mammal as points of reference. Hey, I saw that you're back on my site. It's been a little while. Tell me what's going on in your world. Awesome. Okay, well, one thing real quick, totally no pressure, but I saw that you were looking at that house in Wendell. And I noticed between you and me, it's a little up there, right? It's higher than what we've been looking at. Has your price point changed, or did you just really like that house and want to click through it, right? We're giving opportunities for them to build that conversation with us. Anything about you is in this section. If you want to update your profile, you can do that there. Make sure your contact information is here. Make sure your license is there so that it will sync with MLS. You also can add a signature. Please be sure to do that. Otherwise it won't. And people will be like, who's this coming from, right? Add your signature. You can also add a little bio in case someone finds you on our site. If you've sent that to Kelly, it will auto-populate in there. Now, this is the part that you guys care about. So in terms of organizing our database, what we want to do is put all of our contacts in here. Like I said before, our database is everyone we know. So we do want our SOI in here, right? You'll see that we have a label for Sphere. We also do want to be adding our buyers and sellers, though, obviously. So if you have a database from when you're just getting started, or if you've changed brokerages recently, right? You might have a spreadsheet for this. KvCore does have a way for you to bulk import it. There is a certain template that you need to use. I would just do a quick Google and just say KvCore bulk import template. There's probably a few YouTube videos on it. You can do it yourself, or you can have KvCore import it for you. If you do that, it will bulk import everything. However, most of the time we're just going to be adding a contact here and there. And so if you pick up a new client at an open house or while you're out networking, whatever the case may be at a kid's soccer game, right? We're going to be adding a contact. Now, I know Brenda mentioned that she'd done this. If you have not yet done it, please do it. Add yourself as a lead so you can see what it looks like, what those notifications come through, looking like, how they appear in your inbox, what those automated texts are. You'll click add contact and add all of the required fields. You're going to make sure you click yes to all of these permissions. If you have their street address, maybe go ahead and put it in there. It's one of those things that you're like, I'm not going to worry about it until you need it, right? Then you're digging through the tax records or your old .loop files trying to figure out what that address was. It's up to you. It just makes mailing things a little easier. You also are going to be adding a lead type. Now, the interesting thing here, and that's a little different from other CRMs, is when we're adding a lead type, you can select multiple categories at the same time. So maybe I have someone that's moving from Charlotte, they're also an agent, and they're a buyer of mine, or maybe they're moving from another state, right? I can select multiple of those. You will add a status. Now, this is where KvCore gets a little tricky. And I will say, I don't have a one size fits all. I don't have a hack for you. When it comes to organizing where your leads fall and how you coordinate that, it's totally up to you. But my advice would be pick one or two and stick with it, right? So people that are in my SOI are obviously going to be my sphere. The way that it handles prospect and new lead is very similar, mainly in that if you add anyone into those categories, please expect that it will communicate with them on your behalf. It will very likely set them up on a drip campaign, which means they will be getting definitely emails from you, but possibly texts as well. So if I have someone that's a totally cold lead, if I have someone that I picked up at an open house and literally didn't have a conversation with them, but I have their contact info, or same thing from Zillow or something like that, where I got them as a lead, but I never communicated with them, I'm likely going to put them in one of these categories. Because yes, I'm going to reach out, but the system's going to reach out a lot more than I will. And really and truly, I want them to wake up or get out of the way, right? Like I need to know who to focus on. So if you want one of those where you're really trying to get them to wake up, then by all means, put them in one of those categories. If not, I typically will put someone under client, because then I can have full control over making sure I know what they're getting. And then obviously, as you go under contract and get them closed, you can change that. But these other categories like active lead and new lead, it can be a little tedious. They feel kind of the same to me. So I pick one and stick with it. I'll talk about that in a minute. When you're adding them, you can already add a campaign if you would like to. I don't typically add it from here though, but you can. Now, you also have the option to add some notes. I'll circle back to this, but very typically I will add a note about the criteria of a given client. Once you add them, your contacts will show up just like they appear down here. But to keep things simple, well, I guess one thing real quick. So from this dashboard, from my contacts, I can sort with a ton of fields, just like any other platform out there. I can sort by their rating, by their category. I can sort by the last time, whereas the last time they were on, whether I added them manually, right? There's a ton of filters you can apply. So just know that those are options to you. I'll circle back to that in just a moment. But I want you to see what it looks like once we have, I've added myself a few times. Okay, so this is what it will look like for any given client. This is kind of your client dashboard. So it will show which of those categories we've selected. It will have their contact information and their category. It will also have a place for hashtags. I love hashtags. They are an easy way for us to sort clients. I know not everyone is big into prospecting, totally understandable. But if you get in the mood, or if prospecting is your style, hashtags are a great way to sort. I'm a strong believer that if you are having the same conversation with various people, it obviously flows a lot more naturally. So if I'm having a conversation with someone, I'm like, hey, we met at the open house at 123 Main Street a few months ago. I know it's been a while since we connected, but I know most people start their home search by browsing online and going to open houses. I just wanted you to know that I'm here to be a resource to you in your home search. Wanted to see if you have any questions about our market or about the process. Just kind of get a feel for how I could be a resource to you, right? Whatever the case may be, some other house came up in that neighborhood. I wanted to notify you. If we can have that same conversation with multiple people, it will be very natural. So get in the habit of adding hashtags. This is one of the ways that you can easily sort for people. So I might say, 123 Main Street open house, or just open house, or maybe I did drop-offs in December. I might add a hashtag for December 2022 drop-off. So I know automatically who got those. It's an easy way to sort for people and keep things organized. Now, this is the main thing I want to focus on. Insights. There's not a good way for us to say someone is an A, B, C, or D. So this is where they live in my world. When I'm trying to sort people, I put their star ranking based on where I feel they fall in my pipeline. If they are an A, they are 5 stars. If they're a B, 4, C, 3, you get the point. Whatever the case may be, pick whatever works for you. But that's how I organized it. I would always have everyone in client if they were truly a lead or a client, and then rank them by stars. And then that way, like I just showed you, that way I can then go down and sort by ranking. Say, I'm gonna call all of my Bs today, right? My contracts are about to close, so I wanna call the Bs and make sure I've got someone up next. Or I can do a filter and sort by only the people that have 4 stars or more. Now, you can also add notes. You can do a ton through here. You can call people through the system. I don't typically do that, but you can also make a call log, which I don't have my phone number in here, so it won't let me add a call. But if I were to, I could click call. I then can do a call log. So if I'm calling people, or if I've had a conversation with someone, I can come in here and do a little update on the notes, right? They changed their criteria from a 2-story to include ranch style homes, or they really would like a garage, but they're now open to no garage if needed. Little notes that will help me keep track of their criteria as it progresses. I want to be adding here. I can also schedule a follow-up with them. And if I do that, then that will show up in that upper right-hand corner as something that I need to do later. I love the notes feature though. So as I'm getting someone's criteria, I will put all of it here. I will very often do their bedroom and bathroom count. I also though will go in and add location, price, motivation, right? And I literally might just do LP and do little dashes and write it out. Now, when I do that, I can then pin it to the top. So as I'm going through, that would be the first thing that would show up. So at a glance, I can know without having to dig through all of my past conversations. You can also send an email, you can send a text. If you send a text, they also have templates for you to use. So just play around with those. Now, the thing that Brenda was talking about, hopefully scrolling down, you have a ton of other options. You can add a task, you can share this contact with someone, right? You can also archive a lead. If someone's been in your database forever and they've never woken up and you want to just kind of keep it nice and clean, you can archive them. You can't really ever delete anyone, so just know that. But if you have certain people in certain categories, most notably prospect and new lead, they might be getting texts, calls, and or emails from you that are not just e-alerts. The way that we can check to see if that's happening is along the right-hand side of the page where it says active campaigns. If they're getting texts, it will likely show up here. And we can just turn it off. Now, the other thing to note is they might have a birthday notification. And there is a way to turn that off. Offhand, I don't recall where it is. But just know if you add someone with a birthday, that is likely the case. If they are someone that you want to kind of nurture, like I talked about, though, you can add a campaign. We'll come back to that in just a moment. I'll show you where to view those campaigns so you can get a feel for what they'd be getting. The main thing, though, is setting them up on e-alerts. This is really and truly where our system works for us. I always tell people browse however you're most comfortable. Same thing goes for you as an agent. If you really like setting people up on MLS through the collaboration center, by all means, it's pretty functional. It's not my favorite system though. I find this a little more user-friendly. I like the fact that it looks a little more like Zillow when people are getting notifications. And I like when they favorite things, it shows me how many times they viewed it and things like that. So I always tell people browse however you're comfortable, but just know that the benefit of searching on my site is I can see what you're looking at. So if you favorite something, it sends me a notification. Now, granted, please use your saved and your favorites as a reference point for you. If there's anything you want to see, please send me a text. I don't want us to miss anything, but it helps keep us both on the same page. So if you want to add an e-alert, you can either do that down on the right-hand side of the page, or you can click along the top where it says alerts. When you do that, you can set up to 2 alerts. If you want to set them up, you can do this along the right-hand side, just like you would in any other search platform. You can draw an area, or you can select a given city from the drop-down menu. Now, keep in mind, just like any other platform, we are counting on other agents and their input as to whether this will populate. So we still like to keep things nice and broad, but it's a great starting point, right? So I'm just going to do a few as a point of reference. All right. We'll say, I wonder what 2.5 beds are. It's weird. I've never seen that. All right. We'll leave that for now, right? I'm keeping this criteria very broad. You do have keywords. I like to educate my clients though, and know, I want you to know that I hear your criteria. I look on MLS every day. So if I see anything that really catches my eye for you, I will send it to you directly. Do you prefer text or email? Okay, awesome. Now just know I'm also going to set you up on a search through my website. My goal in doing this is to cast a broad net. So I'm going to keep things broad for 2 reasons. One, because I'm counting on the listing agent putting everything in. And if you say that you want granite countertops, but a listing agent hasn't put that detail because it's not a required field, then we might miss out on an opportunity. So I'm keeping it broad because I don't want to limit us based on other people's inputs, but also because I'd much rather hear you say no to something that's ended up in your inbox than for you to reach out and feel like we've missed an opportunity. So just know I hear you, but we want to cast a broad net. And this is just so we can keep an eye on what's happening in the market, right? And then we can figure out the frequency that they want, say once a week. All right. I'm going to click save or set alert. Now, you can save and send. Transparently though, I always start with setting the alert, because so far I have no idea what our results are. And I want to see what those are before I send it to them. So I'm going to set the alert, and anything that is an option for them will come up here. Holy guacamole, I've got a ton of options. The number of homes that in inventory that fit that criteria will show up along the left-hand side. I like to keep that a lot lower than that. I like to keep it probably between, I don't know, 3 to 30, maybe 40. But I don't want it to be overwhelming, right? Like the abundance theory, if there's too many options, they're not going to know what to do. So I might then go back in and make that a lot more specific. I might eliminate new construction, for example. I might keep a few on there, or set up a separate search specific to new construction and just remove new construction. Make the year built 2021 as the high end for one of them. And then on my next search, create a new one. And then that way they know I've got 2 different searches for you. The nice thing about this though, is we can then email the results to them or text the results. You can text it from your KvCore. When you do that, it does include the little like unsubscribe thing, and it looks very unpersonalized though. So what I typically will do is I'll copy the link and I'll send that link to myself, and then I'll text them from my personal number. Now, The reason I like this is because it shows up very user-friendly, but let's narrow down this criteria a little bit. So it's a little more exclusive. I'm going to put the year build as 2020, the maximum. I'm going to update it. Oh, well, I mean, we're down some, but not dramatically. Okay. Keep it moving. I'm going to go back and edit it again. All right, much better, 42. So if I copy this link and I put it into a search. Hello, there it is. Okay, the thing that I like about KvCore is it will populate like this. So it will show our clients what the options are within the field that we've created. And it will show them a map of where each of those are. So if they want to, they can click on them. It will kind of zoom in. And from there, we can see the houses. It will also show them along the right-hand side. And so, like I said, I'll typically copy that and text it to myself. Now, I always say, I'm going to set you up on a search. Let's see how things look. I'm going to give you a call in a few days, or depending on what their timeline is, right? If they're a year out, I'll say, I'll call you in a few weeks. And then let's reevaluate. I want to make sure I'm sending you things that fit your needs, but I don't want to be flooding your inbox. So let me know. I don't want to be overflowing it. We get enough emails these days. All right, now we can also look at listings while we're in here. So if I've done some hand selected searching, if I've been on MLS that morning, I can also come in. I'll typically go into MLS and copy the MLS numbers of properties that I'm interested in, separated by a comma, and then I'll click search. Oh, property listing. Why is it doing that? I don't know why it's looking like this right now. Weird. Normally it looks like this, so I don't know why the other one wasn't. But when you do that, it is supposed to pull up all of those listings. And when you do that, which I don't know why it's not working right now, but when you do that, you can select the ones that you're interested in along the left-hand side. And same thing goes as what I was just talking about. You can then text them or email them to a client. Now, you can also go in, if you want to see what clients would be getting, depending on what campaign they're in, you'll go into marketing and smart campaigns, and it will show you everything that is available, right? Default active buyer, or if someone's a renter, right? And I have them in my pipeline and I know that they're renting, I definitely would want to set them up on this because I want things to be working for me, but I want to see what they're getting. And I don't know that that shows me that they're getting too much.
Can I ask you a question?
By all means.
A lot of times I have a husband and wife and they both want to get the alerts. And I have them set up separately in KvCore. I don't know if there's a way to put them together or not with their separate emails and phone numbers and all of that. But, you know, right now I have a couple who they want a specific area and I'm trying to put it on the map, but every once in a while, because I don't have the map exactly the same, because it's very hard to get it exactly the same on two different people. You know, one may get a house that the other one doesn't get. I've drawn the lines, but as closely as I can get them to each other on both those maps. Is there a way to combine husband and wife or make the map area that I've drawn on the map the same from one client to the next?
Great question. Let me go back to my contacts. Let's just see. Because I know you could always add multiple emails to the alert. I know in some other CRMs, you can tether people together. I don't know if KvCore is one of those.
There is a way to CC people, I guess, whenever you're sending it automatically, but I've tried to CC myself just to see if it worked and I never get it. So I don't know if it really worked or not.
Yeah, because I mean, it has the CC email thing here. So my advice would be to do it there, but if it's not working for you.
Yeah, I've CC'd myself on that and I've checked my junk mail, regular mail and everything, and I never get copied on any of those.
Let me make a note. Hold on one second. I'm gonna make a note and I'll look into that and I'll touch base with you guys when I send out this recording later. I'll see, because that's a totally valid question, because that was always my thought is even though they're on separate, I would recommend doing it here. That way they get the same alert. But if it's not being sent, then that doesn't help at all. So
I'll play around with it again today and try again to copy myself
yeah.
on some of those.
And I'll see if there's any way you can tether people.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It looks like you can merge a contact, but that's mainly if someone has like registered twice through another email or something, you know?
I tried that and it said it's going to delete the second one. So it'll only keep one person's information. It will not keep it'll like merge them, but it keeps like the first person who's listed as the primary information. So it only like adds, if you didn't have an email for the first one, then it would add the email for the second one. But if you have an email for the first one, that one takes the priority, if that makes sense.
It does. Okay. I'll check into that. Sorry, I don't have the answer. It's definitely something that would be useful though. One thing real quick, I know we were just talking about those campaigns. Some of them are mainly setting tasks for yourself, but just know there are certain certain campaigns that will do things for you. So if you want to look and see what those are, so the default new lead buyer, and this will tell you what the category requirements are. So applies to buyers. So if we've selected that as a category, when the status is new lead, so see anyone that ends up in our new lead category, they'll be getting this campaign automatically. When they do, they will get a text at different points. And it will tell us what those are. Now, if we want to see what it is, for example, that's a task. Let's go down here. It will show us what the text is that will be sent. Are you an investor? I saw you visited my website. It'll show you what they will send and you can edit that. Now you can also come in and create your own campaigns if there's stuff that's worked for you in the past, or if you're really big on open houses and you want to make a specific campaign for these, right? You can go in and make different automated activities, automated texts, to-dos, etc. for yourself. There. All right, and then lead engine. There are a ton of ways that you can use KvCore to generate business. If you want to be doing Facebook leads or anything like that, I would recommend doing it through KvCore. And if you missed what I just did, I clicked on lead engine and then from there clicked get more leads. And so when you do this, there's a ton of options. You can do Facebook leads, you can do Google paid leads, you can do a ton of different things. You can boost a property or boost a listing. When you do that, it will have a certain budget. I think for certain ones it's $250, some might be $750, right? Of that, some of that payment goes to KvCore. They will create these advertisements for you. They will pick the image, they'll pick the text. And so it's very user-friendly. It takes a lot off your plate. I'm a huge believer in saving yourself time and streamlining things. So if they have the data to show what the most effective way is for us to get leads, then I want them to use that. So just know if you do that, anytime you do leads through the system, it will funnel those leads into your CRM, often with a given hashtag, so that you aren't having to import them manually. It automatically imports as they register. Okay, that's kind of the short and sweet of it. Let me go in though. Brenda, is there a certain client name that you want me to search for in terms of like turning off a lead? I won't physically do it, but I'll show you where. Oh, I think you're muted. Brenda, you're muted. You're muted.
For me, it was the drip campaigns, and I think you did that. You showed that earlier, so I went in and cut that off already.
All right, awesome. And then, like I said, that's where most of it is, but there are automated texts for like a home anniversary closing and a birthday that will go to clients. I don't remember how you turn them off, so I'll do a little video for you guys and I'll include that when I send out the video later today. Are there any other questions you guys have about KvCore? I know this was very broad and I didn't go too in depth, but I want to be conscious of your time. So any questions are welcome. If you need to hop off, feel free. But this time is yours if you need it. Any questions? All right. Feel free to hit me up offline. I know that's very broad. There's a ton you can do in here. Transparently, I don't do much with it in terms of all of the integrations. But there are a ton of ways you can use it. In general, though, I would just say my main goal for you would be to put all of your contacts in it, make sure your database is in there, but also more than that, make sure your leads are sorted in terms of A's, B's, C's, whatever that means for you. I would like you to get in the habit of, on a daily basis or at least weekly, writing down how many A's, B's, and C's you have. If you are looking to increase your conversion and you want to increase the number of contracts you have, then therefore we need to be working on increasing the number of appointments that we have. And so very often that means we're then going to be focused on looking at our C's or other people that haven't gotten in front of us yet. Like maybe we've met them a time or two, but haven't set a formal appointment, right? If I'm trying to nurture people, I'm trying to figure out where my next contract is coming from, I need to be figuring out who I can get in front of. And so if I know where my C's are, then I can sort accordingly, sort by my C's, sort by who's been on our site most recently, and start there. Start reaching out to them and just say, hey, I was thinking about you guys. I know it's been a little bit, just wanted to touch base and see what your updated timeline is. Completely no pressure, but I want to make sure you're never waiting on me, right? And make a habit of starting there, because we need to be moving people from our C's to our B's and then on up from there. And so if we don't know where to focus, it's easy for people to fly under the radar. And then we look on Facebook and we find out that they've already purchased, and that's not a good feeling. So real quick, I'll finish with a few little notes. First and foremost, like I just said, everyone should be in your contacts. All leads should be set up on an e-alert. They're already getting these from other websites, like throw your name in the hat, right? We want to make sure that as much as we can that they're coming back to our website. If they're on Zillow, if they're on Realtor, other things like that, they're going to be bombarded with visuals of other agents that they should be reaching out to, or if they inquire about a property, it's going to go to another agent. So if we've been really working with someone, we don't want them to be looking on other sites, because we want to make sure we're kind of keeping them in-house and that we are their resource. So we don't want to bombard them, but we want to make sure we're providing valuable information. Be sure to just ask them how regularly they want to be communicated with, but send them e-alerts. I would do one for yourself, exactly to Brenda's point, so you can see what it looks like. I do it all the time. Maybe set one up for your neighborhood or whatever neighborhood you're farming. If that's something you're focused on, set up an e-alert for yourself so you can stay ahead of the game. And then that might give you reasons to reach out or something to talk about with your neighbors, right? Oh yeah, did you see the house down the street? It just came up. If we're not in the loop, then how can we be the best resource for them?
One thing I called KvCore about, I was hoping that it would like send the alerts. People are so, they have their phones all the time, and not everybody has email on their phone. So I had called and asked, would it send a text? Because I couldn't figure out how to send the alerts via text. And they said, no, only email. Mm-hmm. Something that the person who answered the phone didn't know. Is there a way to send alerts via text instead of the email through KvCore?
Mm-hmm.
Alerts.
There is. Let me see. So now whether it's like every single listing, like if that's the main way they get them, I don't know about that. But I will say, I don't know why this thing is being so slow today. I will say when you go to text though, you can add an MLS ID and include the link listing. So if you put one in there, now granted, like I just said, this isn't the same as all of your alerts are going via text. But if you do see some that are hand selected, you can add that MLS number there and send them the link. I don't know if I would do it that way, because in my opinion, you can just copy that link. But I will double check on that. My thought would be that the answer is no.
Yeah, I wanted the auto alerts to go to their text. So yeah.
I don't know that that's an option. I mean, maybe, you know what, Mhm. I almost wonder if they have an iCloud email, right? Like if they're an Apple user, can you put their iCloud handle here?
I don't know. That's a good question. I just have some old, I have like one older client. She has no email, but she does get text. So, it's just
Oh, she's hip and with it though. Interesting. I'll check on it. I don't know. I'll let you know. One thing to note real quick, be aware of how your email address appears when people get alerts from you. Do you see over here? It says from Kate at Sarah Kate Homes, but if you look down below, the reply to is this. And so at one point I had a client who had literally bought like 2 or 3 houses from me, and they're like, oh yeah, my friend is going to use you. I sent them your email. Hopefully they'll be reaching out. I'm like, oh, okay. It's been like a week. I haven't heard from him. Do you mind just telling me what email address you sent it to? They're like, yes, 1257. I'm like, oh my God, that is not it, right? But I think it was from one of these. So just keep that in mind. If they respond, it will absolutely come right back to your KvCore. So you won't miss out on things, but obviously that is not your true email. And then, like I said, be sure to rate people based on their stars, or at least that's how I do it. You could also use hashtags and just say A or like hot, or I always was a fan of using hashtags. I forgot to mention this earlier, using hashtags for what quarter I plan on doing it. I'm big on planning out my year, right? So if I'm talking to someone, I have them as like 4 stars, but I have them as Q3. Right? In my opinion, my Bs were all about people that I knew for sure would use me, not necessarily by timeline. So if you use hashtags by saying like Q3 2023 contract, then I know based on the conversations that I've had with these clients, they need to buy during that time. So that's how I want to make sure I'm reaching out to them appropriately. Don't be afraid to use that as a ranking source as well. And then be sure to utilize all that your CRM has to offer. Whether you actively go into it, which I hope that you will, I hope that you use your CRM to organize your database and playing around with it regularly. But even if not, at the very least, use it to work for your business in advertising and capturing leads. So if you're hosting an open house and you go to post it on Facebook or go to post it on Instagram, when you're doing your sharing, put that address into your front end website and copy that link and post that link. Say, hey guys, I'm doing an open house this weekend, blah, blah, blah. Like click below for more photos. That way, after a certain number of clicks, people will be required to register. And so I want to make sure that if someone's taking a look at this house, that I'm the one getting them as a potential lead. Even, open houses weren't necessarily my vibe. I wouldn't necessarily do them that often, but you could always do it for one of our other agents. Be like, here are the listings that our office has had come active this week, and just do what I said, copy and paste those MLS numbers, put them into the listing page and generate a link and post that on your Facebook or Instagram. Sometimes I would also, like I said, I'm not an open house person, but I wanted to capitalize on potential free leads. And so sometimes what I'd say is, here are all of the homes in care, like, searching online and going to open houses is a great way to start your home search. Obviously, I would love to help you and be a resource. But if you're looking for a way to just, get a foot in the door, start at an open house. Here's a list of all of the open houses in Cary this weekend, right? Don't do it for the whole triangle. That's overwhelming, but pick an area that you want to focus on and make a link specific to that and post it. And slowly you'll start generating some leads from that. Now, granted, we don't really want to push them towards other agents, right? But find opportunities to share this link and utilize it to build your business and generate leads. And that's about it. It was a lot today, y'all. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me. I know we covered a lot. I know it was a lot of digesting and clicking around and bouncing around. So thank you for hanging in there with me. Is there anything else you guys wanted to touch on, or any questions that you have about anything we talked about today, whether KvCore or database management? All right. Well, you guys know where to find me. Feel free to reach out at any point. If you want to discuss your database, if you want to kind of make a plan to organize it and figure out where different people are, and maybe talk about some scripting, I love that. Or feel free to reach out to one another, maybe make an accountability partner, practice some scripting, or kind of get in the same wavelength, saying, hey, let's do these same posts regularly, or let's be accountability partners. That's what we're here for. We love collaborating. Thank you guys for spending time with me. I love seeing your faces. Thank you so much for all the engagement. I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate all of your time. It's so fun to hear how you guys run your business. So thank you.
Thank
Talk
you.
to you guys soon. I'll send you an email shortly with the recording.
Thanks, Kate.
Of course. Bye, y'all.